And some of you struggle with depression, and you'll know how this feels. Verse 17, he says, I hated life, because the work that wrought under the sun is grievous to me. It's all vanity and vexation of spirit. Why did he say this? He said, I hated my labor. He said, because I'm going to leave it to a man that will come after me. He says, and who knows whether he shall be wise or a fool? Shall he have rule over my labor, what I have done, what I have accomplished, the progress that I have? I'm just going to give it to him. And he had two problems here when he was saying, I hated life. He was comparing himself to other people. And that's the first thing that we trip up and fall in, is we compare our story to everyone else's story. And we think, well, God, you gave that to them. You promoted them. You caused them to have a happy marriage, and what about me? Or you helped them get that, and why do they have that accolade? And they don't deserve it. And we compare ourselves to other people's story. And I'm telling you, that is so dangerous, and it's a recipe for depression. And then we compare ourselves to our own expectations. Like, God, you placed that burden in my heart. I've heard people say that. God, I really thought by now in my life I would be here, or I would do that, or I would have this. And we compare ourselves to our expectation. I want to just encourage someone here that has been in that season just to let God write your story. Let God be the one to write a story that's better than anything you could ever write, to do something in your life that's not comparing to others or comparing to what you think is good, but let God be the one to bring it. And so he said, it caused my heart to despair, verse 20. Caused my heart to despair, all the labor that I took under the sun. Now, we're going to study this phrase further in future weeks. But the words under the sun are a remarkable phrase. In fact, whole books have been written on that three-word prepositional phrase, under the sun. It's used 27 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. And it is a compound word that means to live without God. Again, we're going to study it further in the future to understand what he's saying, because there's a lot to it. But he's saying a life without God is empty. Labor without God is pointless. And in verse 21, he says, all the labor in wisdom, in knowledge, in equity, like if you're trying to do it the right way and the best way, yet to a man that hath not labored, he'll have his portion. Like, listen, all labor, it's just vexation under the sun. Why? Because listen, if you're trying to do something significant for significance, and trying to reap the harvest, and trying to get as much wealth and as much respect and pleasure and all of that, he says it's vanity, it's havel. And so he takes all of this comparison and he says all of his days, verse 23, are sorrow and travail and grief. Why? His heart takes not rest in night. Can't even sleep. I don't know if you've ever been so depressed you can't even sleep. It's just like, I hate life right now. That feeling, that aching feeling sometimes doesn't go away. I want to tell you that will start to lift when you stop comparing yourself to those around you. You stop comparing yourself to the expectation you have within you, and you start placing, letter C, placing God first. That is what leads to fulfillment. Now, there are certainly medical and things, hormone deficiencies. There's lots of reasons for why someone might be depressed. But I will tell you spiritually, just from a spiritual standpoint, a lot of times in my life I've gotten really down and discouraged and even borderline depressed because I was trying to put something in God's place. Didn't want to admit it, but I was. My life was out of order. And I want to tell you what he says about this. He says that if you're not going to enjoy a life with God first, you won't enjoy it at all. Verse number 24, he says there's nothing better than a man should eat and drink and to make his soul enjoy good in his labor. Notice what he says. He doesn't say labor under the sun, labor without God, but labor with God is enjoyed. because he saw that it was from the hand of God. He said, once I started recognizing, oh, everything that God gives me that's good is from his hand. And then he says, for who can eat and hasten more than I? Who could feast and enjoy life more than I could? I had everything. Nothing I didn't have. And then we come to that verse that we read a minute ago, and he said, for God. Everyone say, for God. For God gives. It's God. And if we forget that and we think it's me, I'm the one who did this. I got the promotion. And we start to lift ourselves up with pride. We take God out of the middle and we place ourselves there. And I've done that hundreds of thousands of times. And every single day we have to take ourselves off the throne and place God in the middle, place God first. And it's exactly what Paul was saying to the church at Colossae in Colossians 1 and verse 16. He says, for by him, Jesus, were all things created, that are in the heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether those things be thrones or dominions, principalities, powers, all things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things. He's eternal. Jesus is God. By him all things consist. He that is the head of the body, Jesus, the head of the body of the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have preeminence, he might be first. For it pleased the Father that in him, Jesus, should all the fullness dwell. The fullness you're looking for is in Jesus himself. And so we must view ourselves as dependent creatures who were made for relationship with our Creator, and our closeness to him must be the ultimate priority. Not at the top of your list, but at the center of your life. Everything stems from him. I've told you a few times, in fact, I referenced it last week a little bit, about the low season in life where I had broken up with Danielle, and I knew she was the one, and I was so disillusioned, so honestly depressed. I lost over 25 pounds, and I was already pretty skinny as a college kid, and I didn't have an appetite. I couldn't sleep. I was so distraught, and I was distraught because a lot of it was a misunderstanding, and it was just like this whirlwind of circumstances. And I remember coming to the point where we hadn't talked for like 2 months, and I honestly thought it was like a done deal. And I remember one night I couldn't sleep, and I was laying in my bunk in my dorm room, and I was just looking at the bunk above me, and I was just thinking to myself, how long am I going to torture myself? Like, how long am I going to hate life? How long am I going to be this empty and this? How much more weight can I lose? You know, my roommates were concerned about me, and I was like, I got to snap out of this. And finally, I just said to the Lord, I said, Lord, I thought you wanted me to marry her. I love her with all of my heart. My heart is broken, but she's yours. And if you don't want me to marry her, then that's on you, and you have something or someone better. And that was a really hard thing to bring myself to that conclusion. But I remember telling God that. I finally drifted to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and I got a call from Danielle's dad. And he said, I want to talk to you. And literally the next morning, after I surrendered that to the Lord, God put us back together. And a month later, we were engaged to be married. That doesn't always happen like that. I'm not saying you surrender it and then everything good happens. It's like a magic wand, and this silver bullet. That's not what I'm saying. But God was waiting until he was first again, and until she was out of my life as an idol and there as a good gift from God instead. And the moment you dethrone something good as an idol and you put God in his rightful place, everything starts to fall into place again. And so we must come to a moment of surrender where we surrender our hunt for happiness, and we trust that God cares so much about what you care about. He cares about what breaks your heart, what's keeping you up at night. but he will not enable your self-destruction. And he will not enable you to take good things and make an idol out of them. And so our happiness, as David Gibson says, does not come from a striving hand, but from God's good giving hand. And so we long for happiness. That's normal. And in a world filled with pain, we strive to achieve it. But true and lasting joy and fulfillment is only found when we relentlessly pursue Jesus.